I was 1 year old and fell from the metal climbing structure at the playground. All my life, I have regarded this very unique experience as my very first memory. It is my oldest memory, and yet it is very vivid. I don't remember the events leading to my experience, but I remember the experience very vividly. I was not unconscious, but I would rather describe it as being super conscious. It felt as if I perceived it through a mature consciousness, mind, and awareness, rather than the toddler's brain. I don't remember how I fell, but I remember I felt absolutely no pain, nor did I feel the impact with the ground. It is hard to explain, but it felt as if I levitated upwards, but somehow knew my body was on the ground. Up above me, I saw this beautiful, warm, gentle, yet bright white light. The light had depth to it, as it was brightest in the center, but there was also a spectrum of very beautiful and gentle colors. It was somewhat similar to the sun, but our eyes see the sun as a white, flat circle that is painful to look at. This light did not look flat, nor did it hurt my eyes to look at it. At that moment, it felt as if time had stopped or just didn't exist. I felt that the light was protecting me, and nothing could ever reach me or harm me in its presence. I felt super calm and loved. It wasn't like the love between humans, which involves various emotions. This love was unconditional and serene. I was levitating toward the light. At the same time, I knew that I was dead. I did not have a word for the concept of death. I had this strong perception that my life had ended, and I was returning to where I originated from. I saw my life on Earth as a split second and a tiny fraction of what I was supposed to live. I thought to myself, the equivalent of, was that it? No, this cannot be it. At that moment, I had a clear understanding of who I was on a fundamental level. I am not talking about earthly attributes like gender, race, or ethnicity. I am talking about the spirit me, for lack of a better term. I wasn't a human form, nor did I have an age. I just was. For the sake of explaining this experience, I am writing everything in linear order. However, all of this happened simultaneously. It is hard to explain. I saw a preview of the life I was meant to live. It all made sense, but I don't remember the details. I had a choice to either go towards the light and enter right through it, but I would have not been able to return. As pleasant as this place was, I wanted to continue my earthly life. I was supposed to become someone, and was aware that I hadn't even started this yet. As per my wishes, I returned. Then the light started to fade, and I saw two men walk towards the jungle gym. I initially saw them from the perspective of an observer on the side. A moment later, I was looking at them from the perspective of my body, which was on the ground. The one man was my father, and the other one was a family friend. Oddly enough, I could tell that they weren't too worried, but they felt a bit guilty. Although a toddler, I could understand just how young they both were. They seemed like just boys to me, although they were in their late 20s and early 30s. I was conscious when my father picked me up, but after that, all my memories fade. I do not remember anything after that until I was a bit older. The experience felt as if I awoke for a short moment from toddler consciousness, but then fell asleep, for lack of a better term, into toddler consciousness again. Later on, when I was about 3 years old, I started experiencing dreams. The dreams were a unique experience for me. All of a sudden, I remembered the moment I saw the light as a memory of its own category. It was neither a dream nor a waking moment memory. It was as real, and even more real, than real. I didn't know what to do with the memory, but knew that somehow I would ask about it when the time was right. As I was growing up, I didn't think much about death, but I have always known about it, despite the fact that people assume children are not aware of this reality. For many years, I didn't know what the experience meant. I could not understand why I had such a clear understanding at that age, but had early toddler memories from the following years. This became increasingly confusing to me, and as time passed, I developed this belief that I must have been reincarnated. If I had been an older child who died and was reincarnated, that would have explained the chronological issue. I had started to doubt that maybe I got the part about the men confused, and maybe that was my father from another life. I was determined that one day I would figure out who fell, and if a child indeed died after falling at the playground. I am now 34 years old. Only last year, I decided to ask my mother if she remembers the event. I described it and named the people who I thought were there. She confirmed the event and said that I had fallen and hit my head. On Earth, this would have amounted to seconds. Yet, I felt as if I was out for an unmeasurable amount of time. What I witnessed and experienced does not match in duration to the duration of my falling and being picked up. I received the confirmation that it was me who fell and that I wasn't reincarnated. I don't talk about the experience much because I find that people just don't get it, or they get frightened by it. They hold on to their limited, materialistic view and try to explain my experience as an optical illusion. To that extent, I understand them because they can't possibly imagine it. I know it is not an optical illusion. I am, however, very willing to share it with people who are open-minded enough to listen. That does it for our first experience. Moving on to our second experience. I came into this experience with a 2-year complicated medical history that spun off from cancer adjuvant therapies. That was regularly punctuated by cancer recurrent scares and ongoing surgeries. Because of these spin-off conditions, I rarely leave home, and we just recently relocated back from southern retirement to our northern rural home area. Prior to this, I had no history of a heart condition, and my blood pressure ran abnormally low. For 3 weeks, I suffered inexplicable chest pains. Twice within a week's time, I sought help through our hospital's emergency room, to no avail. It was clear after the first visit that the emergency room staff regarded me as a repeat hypochondriac who was wasting their time. A polished second opinion further misdiagnosed my chest pains. The morning of the attack, I'd taken special care for a rare excursion to Walmart. As we pulled into the parking lot, I experienced chest pain, so I casually took a nitro pill, the only pain medicine the emergency room provided. By the time we'd walked to the door, I stopped for another. By the time we were back to the car, I was taking yet another. By the time we pulled away from the parking lot, I was in dire straits, confused why the nitro pills weren't working. Refusing to go back to our hospital's insulting emergency room, we headed out of town toward home, down this beautiful hilly country highway. It was a perfect weather day. The sun was shining, and the air was brisk. All of my bodily senses began telling me that something terrible was going horribly wrong. I writhed in anxiousness and pain, feeling frighteningly out of sorts. The blue sky ahead increasingly turned various stages of an illuminated white, each stage of white becoming more brilliantly illuminated than the last. In total contrast, the lush green roadsides turned just as ominously dark. The darkened roadside seemed to be gradually consumed, as if being diminished by these blinding, progressively enveloping, radiant, bright, pure white beams of daylight. With a sense of urgency, I heard myself saying aloud, "Something is really wrong. Everything is turning white. Everything is turning white." Too fearful to look away, and in a certain awe of what I was seeing, I tried to view my husband through peripheral vision. I literally feared that if I took my eyes off the white light ahead, it might consume me too. I thought to myself, "This is it. My time is up. I think I'm going to die now. Something is really wrong here. Nothing about this is right." I envisioned myself dead in the car seat, wondering if my husband could cope with that. What would happen? Would he pull off the road safely? Would he be able to pull off the road at all? Where would they take my body? Had I paid bills, and could he find what he needed to move on? Rushes of thoughts that I didn't want to think. I guess that's what heart attack medical literature refers to as a sense of pending doom. From what I could make of my husband's silhouette, panic had glued him to the steering wheel with his own vision fixed straight ahead. He didn't say a word, and he didn't need to say a word. I knew what he was feeling. Instead of panicking, it was as if I could hear him thinking, "There isn't time to go home or to the emergency room." I sensed him feeling gripped with helplessness and fear as I accepted there was very little he could do. By then, We both knew it didn't matter where we were headed. It wasn't going to be in time for whatever was happening. We were stuck right where we were on that 2-lane country highway, and what was going to happen right then and there. In awe of the consuming, brilliant white light and terrified I was dying, I could feel my husband pushing the car to move faster. The white had consumed all but a dark, diminishing silhouette of a tree line, the tree line lying flat against the light's protruding various densities of gleaming white beams. The light was so bright I felt a need to shield my eyes. I had an intense fear the light would consume me if I looked away, and I was in absolute awe of what I was seeing. A rush of sickness suddenly came over me. For several moments, I lowered my head and regurgitated phlegm. I broke into a cold sweat and turned the air conditioning vent directly on my head. When I looked up again, everything had suddenly calmed, like a raging storm that abruptly subsided. Everything faded back to normal, except the chest pain. The blue, clear sky ahead looked like a normal blue sky again. The green, tree-lined landscape looked like a normal green landscape again. We arrived home. Exhausted from the experience, I dragged myself into the house. I took 2 aspirins, and knowing within moments I had to relent to medical help, I contemplated if we should call an ambulance. I was so worn with fatigue I wasn't sure I could make it back to the car. I was afraid to make that road trip again. We drove back to the local hospital's emergency room, and that being my 3rd trip in a week's time, they left us sitting in their lobby for 35 minutes until everyone else ahead of us was called. They nonchalantly got me to a bed and hooked me up to an electrocardiogram. Then a flurry of new activity escalated. I heard them ordering drugs like morphine, and I knew this time they'd found what they couldn't find before. The emergency room doctor came in and, in an unfamiliar nervous tone, informed me that I'd had a bad heart attack and they were life-flighting me directly into surgery. After landing, I lost consciousness only briefly, to then be immediately sedated for the surgery. That does it for today's experiences. As always, I want to know what you thought in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and continue to be blessed.